Maybe I have to undo this during the break.
All right, we are catching each other on the rebound here for our second half of this third class on separating the wheat from the chaff, or the tool of Viveka. And we have been approaching it through different angles, looking at it from all sides now, we hope. The one we're looking at right now is Holy Mother's chart on these three main factors to the attainment of enlightenment. Enlightenment called moksha or mukti or kaivalya. The state of it called nirvana or nirvikalpa or asampragyata. There are words for both the state. Words don't do anything justice here. It's not a state really, but it's beyond all states. But the state itself, and then the person who's in it, and what it's being called. In India, in every darshana, it has that. And also names for the divine beings, not only with form, but the one, all-inclusive, all-pervasive divine reality. That so they're not reticent about words for anything. And, the word has been so much a part of Vedanta, Yoga, Samkhya, and Tantra. It's just like a love relationship of the deepest kind with the word. And so probably Jesus got some of the current information and also reminded of some of the ancient ramifications of the word when he went to India, if he did so, as they surmise he did. And those years where he was missing when he left his parents must be about my father's business years. And so coming back and, like John, getting very interested in the word, he was supposed to have been in a cave at the end of his life meditating on the information that he got about the word from Jesus. So it's a very powerful thing, and where there are, of course, both religions and states of consciousness where words become just fade away, and you're in a state that's beyond them, as we started out chanting that. Yato vacho nivartante, vacho means word, so maybe all words will merge into the word. And we know how powerful the word is in India, A-U-M, and how it correlates with waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states, and Father, Mother, Guru, and the three bodies, and so forth. All these triputis that are so important. So she's got one here for us too that she talked about, the three main factors to enlightenment. And we said they were karma, activity, and its ramifications, cause and effect. Practice, which sadhana would be the perfect word for that. Sadhana is rarely done. what were we saying at satsang the other day? Buddha said the lack of recitation of scriptures is the rust of monasteries. The lack of spiritual self-effort, sadhana, is the rust of households. So he was looking at both the monastic community and the householders, and making this observation that you could fall easily into Maya or into samsara and forget your knowledge. Tibetan Book of the Dead again says that you must retain your knowledge. They call it knowledge memory. So jnana smriti, you have to, in Sanskrit, you have to retain that each lifetime and carry it forward with you. And why that hasn't been happening at the time of Patanjali is because of money making, economy, commerce. That makes you forget your past lifetimes right away. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't go to school. His brother tried to make him. I don't want to forget my mother wisdom that I got from my last lifetime, because then I'll just redo the same thing again over and over and over again. Pretty soon I'll be stumbling stupidly through samsara. When I have all this somewhere back inside of me, all knowledge lies within is one of these 7 laws of the yoga. All knowledge lies within you. So you just have to reaccess it. And if you forget it, then it gets covered over and it takes a long time to bring it back. So again, in context with the sort of discrimination, it's how to keep everything current once you have that and utilizing it in the best way. Live a dharmic life at least. Better than that, live a divine life. Better than that, no life. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is couched at first. It said, if you should ever take a birth, you need to know this. But the whole thing is inferring you should never take a birth. And they asked Vivekananda that in this day and age. Should a man be reborn? After they heard him talk about the teachings of the Dharma when he was here in England and America, 1893 and 1902, I think. So they heard him enough times to finally pose him the question, should a man be reborn then? No, I sincerely hope he will not unless he can do so in full consciousness, like he was doing. And he was an example to all of us, so that's the best way, like Shankara in his time, 700 AD is, why are you still doing practice when you don't need to? To be an example to others and to keep the mirror of the mind wiped clean, because dust will settle over it. Body-mind mechanism is not the Atman. It's not the unchanging reality. And Holy Mother, speaking of that, she said that you must treat your mind very carefully and keep it in good shape, because it's how you're going to get to Brahman. And so here, the first quote we said, work follows you, action, karma follows you after death. And that's why you come back to do more of it. Rajasically, Krishna says in the Gita, those who are caught in rajas of works, they just revolve. They don't go anywhere. They don't go up or down, just revolve. Those who forget their knowledge fall, tamas, and those who remember their knowledge lifetime to lifetime, they will grow and they will rise, sattva. They will have sattvic states. And then learn how to get beyond sattva. So we read 2 of the quotes here with karma and sadhana, and we started to look at time, and I read that down quickly, which I think was a good thing to do. It's a good short list for us to look at. If you're beginning into a spiritual path, again, hard not to couch it in unfortunate terms, but if you've taken too many gurus or you never find a guru in this lifetime, then that's because of this loss of memory and losing your way on the path. But if you come and you see the path, but you mix it, there's an admixture of gurus and paths, religions. You want to menu taste, do the spiritual menu tasting thing, and you're falling off them, then you're getting this habit of not completing anything. It's not just jack of all trades, master of none. It's worse than that in spiritual life. There's a lot to uncover later then. Imagine if you're doing mind reading, you know, how much you have to sift through to get back to the original thought that was a bad one, that caused you to take a birth in negative wombs. And the Tibetan, the Book of the Dead says that too. You'll be aware from the knowledge that you select in this lifetime will open the womb door for you in the next lifetime. And it'll also make you aware of those wombs that are dark and those circumstances which are negative and bad parents. And it's all laid out right there in that scripture. And what to avoid and how to avoid it. If you have an age, it says, where there is nothing but good and bad and nothing virtuous, nothing dharmic, like here, like we had, you know, good and bad mixtures of parents and circumstances and schools and education. Wasn't all bad, wasn't all good. And so what do they advise for that? They want you to be neutral about entering into any womb. The neutrality of a soul with its knowledge to bear is the greatest spiritual art of rebirth, they say. So you can enter a bad womb neutral, you can enter a good womb neutral, because the good womb may turn bad later and the bad womb may turn good later. And that's the world you're entering. You have to know that you must be neutral in between it all and choose in that vein, not through aversion and not through attraction. So the teachings of negative dualities follow you, like she says, even after death and before your next birth. This is why the path is the spiritual art, the Dharmic path. It's what you do, particularly if you are going to choose to be reborn. Because if you should ever decide to choose, means you should probably consider that differently. So what does she say, now that we've seen what she said about Kala, all these bullet points as they were, see, select nishtam, find a guru, seek out a path, go on retreat, recall your life's purpose. It's just a beautiful, I gathered this from many different books that have been left behind about her, that her students and the swamis and others heard her say. So it's a very nice list there, very current too. You know, I mean, she lived into the 1920s, so she's much more current than Sri Ramakrishna was, who passed in 1886. So she continued on as, I think, the only woman I can think of who heads a major religious organization in the world. I've never heard of any others that do. Millions of people. And she was just apparently a simple village woman. There's songs about that, how the Divine Mother came, clothed herself in the garb of a simple village woman, when she was really the Divine Mother Kali coming in the Kali Yuga. And you know, so you have to look through those coverings with your sword of discrimination. Like, she gave it to you, and then you cut away the facade from her, and you saw who she really was. And she won't give that out easily to just anyone. And again, it's our own sadhana that helps us perfect ourself or retrieve ourself from our own ignorance. It's all self-actuated and self-consummated. So about sadhana, which she puts forward here as the second great factor in enlightenment. Purify the soul via worship. Soul means mind, of course, here. Strengthen body, mind via yoga. Yoga here means eight-limbed. I always have to say something about these to make sure that we're going deep enough. Hone the intellect via study. So that your intelligence will come back to you. Memorize the scriptures. That's called in yoga svadhyaya. Yeah. Svadhyaya. You recite and you memorize both. You don't just parrot. The parrot says the mantra all the time, but it never gets enlightened. So you're going to need to chant and memorize and manana, do the mind rumination, and then come up with the wheat out of the chaff, come up with the essence, and then hang on to that essence all through your life and use it at the time of death and into your next lifetime. What else will get you there? Some wandering meditation you did for 50 years that never helped you see anything? Some dancing and singing? Some working up a froth about the lips by too much pontificating? I'm quoting Swami Vivekananda here when he heard people talk about God but not know God. No, none of that will do it. You're going to have to take this deep. So if you memorize it, then it's already deep. I can only use my own experience as a musician. When I learned great works that were hard through my teacher, Beverly Lebec, this beautiful woman who was a fine cellist, who was a student of Pablo Casal's. And she taught me to play the cello. One day I was playing and she took the music away. Okay, it's time. Let's see if that music stuck in you. And of course I couldn't reproduce it. So go home and memorize it was the thing from now on. So I was back there looking at the notes, putting them into my fingers, which is really putting it into my mind, and then playing music. And I found myself free of the written note. And what a beautiful feeling that was. I could express better. And it was just all for entertainment of folks, so it's got its downside. But memorizing things, you'd say it's like inserting them into your mind, just like eating food would insert nutrients into the organs, into the very flesh of your body. But that's not all it does, memorizing. It's remembering what is. That's the true meaning of memory, is remembering that knowledge is, that existence is, that God is. It's the isness in everything. That's the real meaning. You're trying to, by memorization, convince yourself of that or remember that. So that's why we sing in the scriptures of the Mother, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Chitti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Smriti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Namo Namaha Ya Devi Namo Namaha Ya Devi Namo Namaha Ya Devi Namo Namaha Om. O Divine Mother of the Universe, you exist in the form of highest knowledge in the hearts and minds of all beings. Chitti Rupena Samstita, steady Samstita. O Mother of the Universe, you exist as divine memory in the hearts and minds of all beings. Smriti Rupena Samstita. So you must be steady in highest thought, steady in the Dharma thinking, steady in memory, steady in meditation, steady in concentration, and memorize until the mind gets the idea and won't forget ever again. You have a host of your favorite slokas. I think, I can say this to you and I can help teach you by this. Actually, what it really is I can remember this at death. And that's the truth against blackness of death, against the darkness of ignorance. It can't compete if it's implanted in you. It's like disease can't get in if you have a good healthy diet and a right mental perspective. In that same way, ignorance can't get in if you have wisdom that is in your mind. It's a constant, it's eternal. And you're looking at it as that. And in no other way will you look at it. Like Ramakrishna, no, I can't go to school. They're using Mother Wisdom just to store up bananas and rice. And His brother told him, well, look at the other Brahmin priests, because he was a Brahmin priest, you see. Look at the other Brahmin priests. They're enjoying everything high in the hog. You see? Yeah, that's the problem. They're like vultures soaring high in the sky of intellect, but their eyes are focused on the carrion pit on the ground. See? What are the three great traps? Spouse, children, and money. The three great traps. It's not only Tantra that says that, Vivekananda stated that. So you be very wary of those things, because that's what's trapping everyone into Maya. And they can't get out. They forget themselves. If you do get married, it's sort of like the Tibetan Book of the Dead again. If you do get married, you do have children, then give them the Dharma. Take the Dharma yourself and give them the Dharma. Help them up and out of rebirth in ignorance. So I stop on Swadhyaya because it's one of the things I think people aren't doing in their spiritual practice. It's under the sadhana heading. This is what I have to do. And otherwise, I've got the music in front of me all the time. I'm just following, everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. Here I can play the cello concerto here, you see, but 15,000 other cellists around the world are playing it at the same time I am, and there's no difference in any of them. We're all saying, I can play the concerto, you see. And I can get somewhere with it, you see. I can get fame and money and wives and children. But if I memorize it, then you see, that's the music of the soul you're talking about. That's divine sound that you're bridging the gap to. What professionals don't ever find out is what's beyond talent. And what's the word I always forget, because I was never that. Ambitious, yeah. I can never remember that word when I try and think of it, because I was never ambitious. I saw through it and ran the other direction. Used music in a different way. Practice japa of the holy mantra. That's one of the best sadhanas. Perceive God with form. Very important in our day and age. Not to have distaste for God's form just because some non-dual people or some monotheistic religion says that, you shouldn't engage in devotions and ritual and offering flowers and incenses. Or India's had a love affair with that since time immemorial. You can't take the worship out of non-duality. You may have to insert non-duality back into your worship so that your Brahmin priest class won't fall as it did in India. Perceive God with form is then very important. So Sri Ramakrishna would ask you, if you came up to him, do you believe God with form or without form? And people would answer accordingly to what they thought. So to those people who said, I believe in God with form, you'd say, that's very good, but don't discount the power of the formless reality. And for the people who said, oh, formless reality, form, get thee behind me, you see. God doesn't have forms and so forth. I'm Advaitic. I'm non-dual. You say, well, that's fine too, but never think your only path is the right path. And there are many beings, she said, who are getting to enlightenment through ritualism. Would you want to pull the carpet out from under them, under their feet, just because you think you have a higher way of looking at things than they do? Let's examine what non-duality consists of. Is it all inclusive in you? A man went to see his friend. His friend had gotten enlightened. All of India knew about it. Oh, I've got to go see my friend to see what an enlightened being's like. So he went to his friend. His friend was inside, you see, the room. And his servant came out. He said, oh, he wants to see you very much. He'll be with you He's just offering flowers on his guru's slippers right now. So the man, he goes, what? So he sat down and waited. So his friend came out, they embraced, they talked, mulled over old times. And he said, what's this about, you're supposed to be enlightened now. I can see there's a great light coming off you, but since you're enlightened, why are you offering flowers to your guru's slippers and doing that ritual still? And the man said, well, I never thought of it. I do everything else. I might as well do that too. So that's this all-inclusiveness. It doesn't discriminate away things that are sweet and which are characteristics of the soul. So God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and form as well, is how Sri Ramakrishna put that. And so you never limit that with a capital T, never limit it. You can't. And the minute you try to, then you've committed an error in philosophy against non-duality. Finally, realize the formless Brahman. So perceive God with form, use that, as the Christians say, to get through the Son to the Father, and then realize the formless Brahman. Because there are beings who will hang out back in duality. Oh, we just love Krishna so much, sorry, I can't leave him. I don't want your Brahman. So we asked my teacher once, what about those people who say, I would rather be sugar, I would rather eat sugar than be sugar. That's how they say. So I'd rather taste the sweetness of God with form. Jesus, Krishna. But I don't want to be sugar because then I couldn't anymore. And so we asked my teacher, Swami Shishananda, that once, and he said, that's because they don't know the beauty of being sugar. And nobody will ever know that till they have that experience. They'll just enjoy the sweetness of sugar. Nothing wrong with that. As Vedantists, we don't really have a problem with that. Like I say, it's all inclusive. But it seems to us that until you have a vision of the formless Brahman, there's something incomplete in the picture. And we've seen it. And it tends towards degeneration of religion sometimes. Grasping to the form, no matter how high and beautiful it is, we say. So if you've tested God with form against a backdrop of formless reality, if the hailstone has fallen into the ocean and dissolved there, and it knew what the ocean was, and it knew itself to be one with the ocean, and it takes a form again and turns into another hailstone, then it has a much greater understanding. It'll be a much greater soul, like those who have both Prema Bhakti and Brahmagyana. You saw that God blog? Sun and moon in the same sky. Have you seen that yet? Get on that website, become a member, get on that website and read those things. Here are my 3 or 4 paragraph offerings. I've written the big tomes. I've condensed them down into little books. I've done everything possible to make my teachings an example for the good of other people's spiritual life. But now I'm coming down to 4 paragraphs in each given topic. So go on there and read that. And if you read sun and moon under the same sky, then you'll know what I'm talking about. I saw that happen once on a drive, so I thought back. See, and so it means some souls have Brahmagyan, the highest non-dual wisdom that has been gotten by experience of samadhi, nirvikalpa. And they also have Prema Bhakti that's been gotten by seeing the form of God and knowing it to be real and one with the Father. So to have both of those, see, would be a Sri Ramakrishna. A ship, again, that only puts out to port once every 500 years, leaves port and comes to this ocean of relativity. Sails across it, leaving great waves of Dharma behind it. That only leaves us to look at karma vinasha. If you know what vinasha means in Sanskrit, destruction. She's called Vigya Vinashini. Sharadesh, it's one of her names. So she destroys all ignorance and even destroys lower knowledge so that higher knowledge can be revealed. So in her words, over time, we found out that what she would be talking to you about in terms of destroying your karma, because we know in time it's going to happen over time, it's going to happen with sadhana. So therefore you've got the unforgiving factor, time. Time exists only in the mind, spreading its branches inexorably. The Tibetan Book of the Dead again. So you've got to deal with time. And if it's in the mind, you'll have to be in the mind to deal with it. And therefore then the tool you're given in that is sadhana, the jungle of time spreading its roots inexorably. You've got the sword of Vivekananda as your sadhana, and what you can do with that is destroy past and present karmas. And as we said just before the break, there's this current karma now called prarabdha, which you're living. What to do with that? They asked Shankara. Stay close to Brahman. So it means prepare for your next lifetime. You can't just sit here and think I'm okay, you see, and I'll be fine when death comes. It'd be much more to be certain of the fact that death is an illusion. But if you can't even go that far, because everything's eternal and there's no beginnings, middles, and ends, so how can I die? How can the real me ever die? Then you have to acknowledge it for yourself through practice. And so as you're here, you're looking at the things which bind you. They come sometimes out of nowhere. You thought you were free of them. So, oh, there's that old thought again. Or, there's that old problem with my ancestors coming back. Or I have to deal with this again and again. It goes away and it comes. So it gives you the appearance of it being gone, but it's not. It's coming back out of somewhere. It still has a source of origin. So, it's like sticking a silver spike into Dracula's heart. It's about the only thing that's finally going to do it, or else it's going to haunt you for lifetimes that you didn't do that. So you take this spike of non-dual awareness, or this silver sword of discrimination that will cut through everything and right to the heart of ignorance, and you become absolutely assured of your wisdom. Ram Prasad sings in one of his beautiful songs, I know, Lord, I know, Mother, now, and I know that I know. Freedom from not knowing has been granted to me by you. So he's not being arrogant. He's saying, oh, I know, and I know that I know that ignorance is dead, I'm sure of it. But he's saying, actually, I know because freedom from not knowing was given to you by me. Freedom from not knowing was given to me by you. So you had this epiphany, as it were, spiritually speaking. So you can see here in this list how she's going to make this point. You must awaken to the insidious presence of Maya. Nobody knows what Maya is. When I was 19, I found the word. And all of a sudden, everything that I'd been going through made sense. And I knew there was a group of great souls who had coined the word, and it was in a different language, and that they were aware that there was something hidden in everything. And that something hidden there was not Brahman. That was a far cry yet, but it was this name, form, time, space, and causality that everyone's attached to as they stumble stupidly through samsara. It's like the glue that's keeping everything together in forms, when you should blast forms apart. So that's an initial awakening you have, when all of a sudden you see everything's a false superposition over Brahman. And that's why you have the sword. It removes false superpositions. they should have never happened in the first place. Shankara saw through them at 6 and remembered his memory. Ramana Maharshi saw through them at 12 and remembered his divine memory. Jesus at 14, at least. Vivekananda very early on. So it's like a race. Talk about, and they're off, you see, out the gate. It's like, let's all go down there and be enlightened souls on earth and see who remembers Maya first. Because it's not that easy a thing. Whole cultures are unaware of it. They don't have a word for it. They don't have a 4-letter word. The queen of all 4-letter words I used to call Maya, if you know what I mean. So, they're not aware of that. I don't have a word for what flummoxes me, for what makes me uneasy, for that feeling that comes upon me that everything is not all right and the world is not my oyster. Dis-ease that comes upon me, and it can get worse. See, so you awaken to that presence, and you offset it, like Ram Prasad is now sitting here ready, armed with the mantra, Om Tara, Om Kali, Om Durga. So when death comes, I will open up my heart and show him the names of the Divine Mother, and death will flee. There's many songs written like that. Then recognize the limitations of name and form in nature. Sort of back to even names and forms that are very high, so that you realize the nameless, formless essence too. That you give yourself a chance to do that, because you may not have realized it, but you've experienced it. Everyone does in deep sleep, but they don't remember it. There's a great light that you see, or a great sound that you're sucked into. I come out of deep sleep these days, and that sound of Om is just, it's just, is there a word for it? It's just, it's just primordial, it's just intense. And you're having a hard time gathering your thoughts back into your mind because the mind is going towards that sound. And so I think everyone has that experience, but they just don't, it doesn't linger. Like I had a dream a couple nights ago that I was laying on top of my father and mother. In a very natural way, I was just laying on top of them. And I remember smelling my father's hair and talking with him and saying, I criticized him about being an atheist in that lifetime, in my dream. And he started defending himself in some way. And I was thinking, maybe he was an atheist to show me that I needed to turn my path inward. Because he would drive my mother's friends out of the house by just tearing Christianity anew, you know what, and their belief in Christ and all that. He was just like, my mother would try not to have him in the room when any Christian folk came over who were like Bible thumper kind. So this, I was thinking of that because of the sound of Om. It's like, I very seldom dream like that, or dream of my parents that much. I have a couple of dreams a year of my father, and I talk with him as if he's alive. And that's the thing that amazes me, that he never died. That I can just go there and have conversations with him. And in the dream I'm thinking, this is amazing, he's still alive. So it comes to mind here when you are looking for something that's beyond the nature of name and form. It's either light or sound you're looking at. If it's a mystical experience, it's more sound, and if it's a visionary experience, it's light. And people have predilections for both of those, or some only one and not the other. But they will happen if you court them. So you have to open up to these experiences and be You couldn't be like this and expect him to come, except like through the grace of God or through some accident. I bumped my head, all of a sudden I saw the light, you see. And the psychologists in the West would come, don't think about that, you see. Your parents, don't think about that. But you're actually just getting a view through name and form. It's like looking through someone instead of at them, Like none of that matters anymore. Like Sri Ramakrishna is saying, Naren, Swami Vivekananda when he was young, Lord of men, Narendra. He just walks around with his eyes always like this. He's got the look in his eyes like a mother bird who's hatching her eggs. He's just like, his hair's all tousled, his clothes are unkempt, and it's just his expression, his amazement as a teenager. So he's not seeing anything that everyone else is, not only seeing but grabbing onto desperately, as if it were the only thing to gain in life. He's got that which is the only thing to have. And so why not call yourself Vivekananda then? It was Narendranath before, now I'll be Vivekananda. Because I'm going west and they don't know a thing about that sword. They're still stuck in Maya and they don't even know they are. Like a couple of fish caught in a net, right? Saraswati drew a nice image for that God blog. 4 kinds of fish in the sea, Sri Ramakrishna said. Perceive the suffering-ridden nature of relative existence. So if you're not already on the right page, they'll give you a few swift kicks to remind you, see. Oh, you think it's all wine and roses here, but roses have thorn and wine turns you into an alcoholic. So, there's always something behind it is the devil to pay. And so we're going to tell you about that now. So you won't, hopefully can go around such barriers. Vikya Vinashana, the word Vinasha again, that's Ganesha, it's Vikya Vinashana. He destroys all obstacles on your spiritual path, so you take him. Build a temple, and I've seen it done, you bury a statue of Ganesha in one of the corners, or all 4 corners if you want. And then you put the temple up, you see, it's all built on, may this be successful and have no obstacles. Talk about the importance of certain forms and names. So that's in the song even. Vikya Vinashane Sharade Brahma Sanatani Sharade Prema Svarupini Sharade Namo Narayani Sharade. Vikya Vinashani, she destroys all obstacles in the path. All impediments go away if you take her as your primal guide. May she, the primal guide, my refuge be, Vivekananda said. Or she who, since birth, has ever led me on through passive trouble to perfection's goal. That you liked when I recited it at breakfast the other day. Mother wise in her own sweet and playful ways. Then subdue sense life by noting the dangers of pleasure and enjoyment. We want freedom from the senses, not freedom to the senses. So if you're practicing yoga and you're still giving free license to the senses, then you don't understand what yoga is and you're on the wrong path. It's not about immature all-inclusiveness. That comes later. Advaita, it comes much later when you fully understand it. It's about denial right now. It's about detachment. It's about renunciation. Mother said, Sri Ramakrishna taught me all the mantras, and they are all soaked, imbued with renunciation. So that's what the mantra does for you. Given all these first bullet points, wakens you up to the presence of Maya, helps you see through names and forms, and shows you the suffering-ridden nature of existence, and subdues sense life by showing you that pleasure and enjoyment is not the goal of existence. Then she says, break free of the cocoon of family life and mundane human convention. Scrutinize the link to one's ancestors and break free of the chain of rebirth with them. So this is all third chakra. So 3 worlds, third chakra stuff. Bhur Bhuva Swaha. May we bring peace to that. And also peace to our ancestors, but first I'm going to have to get out of the bonds of ancestor, the limitations of ancestor worship, which some religions, even Hinduism, parts of it are very much ensconced in right now. It's not going to do just to bow and scrape before images and so forth. It's going to have to be something that makes that worship the divine, authentic article it is, and the very powerful tool that it is too. Perceiving God with form is going to proceed well with the bhakti path in your heart. So those two are very powerful statements from she who was married to the Paramahamsa, who is the wife of the avatar of the age. Once Sri Ramakrishna's mother said, "Oh, poor Sharala, she'll never have children." Being a wife of Sri Ramakrishna, she'll never have children. So Holy Mother, being only in her 20s, went to Sri Ramakrishna and, "What's wrong with you?" "Oh, what your mother told me, you see." And he said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. By the time we're through, you'll have millions of children calling you mother." And it so happened that came to pass. She had thousands of people coming to her after he passed away, all calling her Ma, 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 and the Ma, seeing her as the ultimate incarnation. You go to India and you just walk around, people, are from different sampradayas and different paths and different lineages and so forth. But if she comes up in the subject, it's always, "Oh, Ma Sharada. Oh, Ma Sharada." It's just like they knew about her long ago, and it was a done deal. And they already know. And we're just finding out. So those two are very important, and she said that. Break free of the cocoon of family life. You know why the mother crab always stays in the hole in the beach and never comes out? Because its progeny are down there. That's one of her teachings. So that's how focus, just like focus on money early on, will rob you of your past life's memory of studying the Dharma, of reading the Viveka Chudamani and so forth. In that same way, concentration on family, and it will rob you of your freedom. And I've even seen it instanced in India. Love your children, put them on your knee. Okay, now go away. And when they go away, you never think about them again till the next time you see them. So it's not this clingy relationship to children that you have, let's put some sort of a intercom system between downstairs and upstairs and hanging on the baby's crib so that it even cries once, I go running up there and, "Oh, poor thing," you see. All our sentimental emotionalism with pets and with children, and then we're called being callous or insensitive. But what about being bound? And what about getting free? Buddha was born in the family, saw the 4 signs, left the palace, and then went back later after he got his nirvana to tell his stepmother. He had a son. A lot of people don't realize Buddha had a son. He chained him He named him Rahula. Means chain around my neck. And if you're really honest with yourself, if you have children, you know they're a chain around your neck. You're in for it. And you better be in for it responsibly and duty-minded. But if you're in for down with it with Dharma, then the both of you get free. And you've done a great service, a much greater service, a service than any other thing you could have done for a child, is to get them free. Start them out in the right footing that you didn't get when you started with your parents. I don't want you. I don't want your son. I want your grandson. Why? Because your grandson got the teachings from your son, whom you taught the Dharma, and developed him over 60, 70, 80 years, and was reborn, Tibetan Book of the Dead style, in his next lifetime, with good parents who could teach him. Sometimes I remember my friend in Portland, a very wise person. What's it all come down to for you? I asked him one day. For me, Babaji says, it all comes down to getting dharmic parents in my next lifetime. He could have chosen tons of things. He could have even said, I get enlightened. But he was being practical. Is that really going to happen? Without loving God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, and your neighbor is yourself, by the way. You can love yourself, but can you love that guy next door or down the street who's such a problem to you? Do you have that kind of impartiality, neutrality that you had even when you chose a womb door into the next life? So it's give me dharmic parents time. Penultimately, she says here, inspect individual thoughts and habits and connect them to actions in past lifetimes. That's kind of an English rendering of something that she explained. That is really the dynamics of applying Viveka once you have it. Inspect individual thoughts and habits, connect them to actions to past lifetimes. And see how you came here, what means you used in good, bad, and mixed karma that you have. And note the difference and the distinctions, and then take that knowledge that you've gained symbolically with the sword of wisdom and cut away everything that's negative and mixed, and end up with just the flesh. A fruit seller sells the bell fruit in the marketplace, Ramakrishna says. He cuts away the skin, takes out the stem, cuts out the core, the seeds, and sells the flesh. And therefore, he doesn't have the full weight of the fruit. That's the idea. See? So, yes, the flesh is the essence, but the flesh couldn't even matured and been sold if it didn't have the skin to protect it, the stem that connected it to the tree, the seeds that will continue it on to the next lifetime. I mean, talk about a God blog. I've already written it actually, but that's what happens with people who cut away everything just for the essence and don't have this all-inclusive axiom, principle, truism of non-duality. Not the full, ripe, mature renunciation that these great souls are known for. Finally, she says, meditate with the specific aim to dissolve all mental residue that binds the mind to relativity. So those last two are pretty much the dynamics and the result that you can end up with. What you should probably want to end up with once you head from Viveka to Vairagya, and then get inner peace, self-control, the ability to concentrate on Brahman with the world aside, and forbearance of all ills, faith in divine reality, and the desire to be free come after Viveka Vairagya. Those are called the four great treasures and the six jewels. So she says here, as we close this chart, perhaps one practices japa and austerity in this life. In the next life, one intensifies the spiritual mood, and in the following advances it further. Thus spiritual evolution goes on. The moment that one's karmas come to an end, and then one realizes God. That is one's last birth. Thus, this, plus the practice of spiritual discipline and time, are the factors in the attainment of spiritual knowledge. Nice, huh? So then here, let's look how Krishna puts it. Oh, it's glare?
Yeah. So they're getting better. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to look sideways at it, but I can give you what it says there. This is a quick study. Here's Sri Krishna's version of what Holy Mother just said in this last quote on the chart we just studied. And this is from the Bhagavad Gita. You'll find it in there. But you'll find a lot of things in the Gita, but in any scripture, I like to go through and read it broadly, and then just start taking lines out of it and put the main aspects all together, so you just get it in a line. Both ways are good, to read the whole thing and also to quintessentialize it like that. Well, there's, anyway, a reference to that quote I've been using twice in the first half. Among thousands of beings, scarcely one strives for perfection. And of those who strive and succeed, scarcely one knows me in truth. And I've heard that interpreted and transliterated in different ways, like millions. People say that very few come to even recognize a great being. I mean, how many recognized Jesus? And so many hated him. So, going to take some very strong discrimination and some courage of your own convictions to stay with an enlightened soul that you've seen has that kind of knowledge that you need. Follow it through to the path and get free. Salute my teacher. So here in a quick rundown is what it is. This is the birth, life, death and rebirth that we want to look at through Krishna's words. Then I'll show you the Tibetan Book of the Dead either now or next week. Through good actions, the soul is born in the worlds of the righteous. So we're starting off in a very good place. I wouldn't call it a fully conscious rebirth, but through good actions, so merit. It's like punya, it's called in Buddhism. Not papa, demerit, but punya. So they want you to just give off bad actions and just start doing good actions. And it's, action will never get you free. Both Krishna and Shankara, that is the kings of Shaivism and Vaishnavism, both of them say that. Actions, billions of actions will never get you free. But here's a way to use action to open a door towards freedom. So through good actions, the soul is born in the worlds of the righteous. And Krishna adds, neither in this world nor in the next is there destruction for the doer of good, for my child never comes to grief. Even a little bit of this yoga will save you, Arjuna. When Arjuna asks him earlier in the Gita, what happens to that being who loves God but is still attached to the world all through his life, comes to his death? Isn't he just rent apart like a cloud by the wind in the sky? Oh no, just a little practice of yoga will save you from the great fear. Death is the great fear. And so it's a doorway to conscious death. You don't need to fear death, it's actually illusory. Because the life you're living is illusory. How can a dream body die? In the sense that you're just occupying dream bodies. We're all dreaming this right now. This is all happening not in the physical world, this is happening in our minds. Because if our minds weren't there, this physical world wouldn't be there. Try thinking about that in deep sleep, or by contemplating deep sleep. What to speak of samadhi, which is beyond deep sleep. So we're just all doing everything in the mind right now. You went to the beach yesterday and you were doing it in the beach in the mind. It's not a physical location in space. That's not real. That's vibrating particles that are changing the billionths of a second because of your dream power. The next point is, and this is the soul moving inward through births, right? The dream gets better. If you're going to dream better and better dreams, Sri Aurobindo said. So the next level or strata of that better dream is, then the soul is born into the houses of the pure and prosperous. I mean, pretty much prosperous means I won't have to think about money. And pure, if you have purity with that, then you're looking to realize God. If you don't have purity with prosperity, it's not going to happen. That's, the lives of the rich and famous serials on TV. See, talk about stumbling stupidly through samsara and making all sorts of errors, and taking all sorts of wooden nickels and wasting your time. So dharma first, then kama and artha. Kama means desire, artha means right livelihood. So he says, having attained the realms of the righteous and living there for countless years, one unable to reach perfection in yoga is born in the homes of the pure and prosperous. And then, the next lifetime, it seeks knowledge there and is born in the family of yogis. And like in this day and age, I mean, this is an old scripture. This day and age, we're saying, well, good luck with that. Like my friend in Portland, I want dharmic parents. Well, then I'll see you in Tibet, or next lifetime, or I'll see you in India. Probably won't see you here in America unless we can get this SRV going, and we can spread this dharma further through Zen, through Tibetan Buddhism, through Vedanta, through Sufism. I mean, these are basically the four avenues in which this kind of teaching is getting spread right now. So one is born into the family of wise rishis or yogis. A birth like this is difficult to attain in this world, Arjuna. So he says it even back in that time. Because basically yogis, might not be having children. I know a lot of people even practicing yoga, my own students, are saying, no, I don't think I'm going that direction, you see. I don't see it. And some of these aren't even advanced practitioners yet. I mean, basically, no, this is our last lifetime here. One Hindu couple that are students of mine told me that. No, this is our last lifetime here. We're not coming back here again. So that's a conclusion. They're not unsure of it at all. Well, here's a good one that would then go well with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I'll get to next week, I guess. We'll look at the different bardos and side by side with this chart. And another chart I have too that has to do with how to consciously die, according to Sri Krishna's words. What to say when you die to yourself, and how you go through different practices, how you situate yourself. Like the man, my friend Gary Dickens, who did that painting behind there. He died sitting like I'm sitting right now. I walked into his room and he was just back against the wall, and he just passed away in meditation. Peace and bliss be upon him. So this is very much like where you find these teachings in Vedanta of, rebirth and passing and choosing your womb and all. It's there in the scriptures. You have to look for it. India just didn't necessarily focus on that. Tibet said, that's what we want. See? 700 AD, this is going to be what we major in. And because we majored in it, we came up with the Mahamudra too, which is our version of non-duality, which is just one of the most splendid teachings in all of religion. So you can see how focusing in on where you came from, where you're going, and who you are will lead to, I don't come and go. See, it's all a dream. It didn't happen. It was in my mind. And I'm just who I am, birthless, deathless, changeless, and perfect. And I always have been that, and it will never be anything but that. Conclusion. Great seal. Is it? Mahamudra. It's like, God heard you say that, and if he had a form, he reached back in his desk in his drawer and took out a great seal, inked it, and stamped it on the declaration of your statement. Well done. You graduated. On to formlessness. I'll never see you again. So to finish this, because we've run out of time, or are running out of time, strives for higher knowledge among spiritual seekers. So if you got dharmic parents, hopefully rishis, maybe yogis, if they're having children, some do, or sometimes have to, then you strive for higher knowledge when you have that birth. So it's kind of like Tibetan Book of the Dead right there, in a lot of its main points, at a much earlier time. So he says, in such a birth, the soul retains knowledge of its previous birth, strives harder to attain perfection. Bingo. See? In such a birth, he recalls his previous wisdom. That's what got him into that birth, was his wisdom. And he purified his mind with the mantra, read the scriptures, memorized it, did all those things. And that just opened the door to a new womb for him. Because somehow in that lifetime, he really couldn't perfect himself yet. I mean, his real self was always perfect, but his ego self wasn't quite mature there, hadn't let go all of its tendrils. I mean, because those things are like a chain link bridge. See? Hundreds and hundreds of chains hanging down from those two main cables, and some of them have actually broken. But there are hundreds and hundreds more holding the bridge up. That's how Sri Ramakrishna said, to get rid of all these imperfections in the mind, it's no small thing. You're probably going to need, a sort of wisdom given to you by the Divine Mother herself to destroy those obstacles. Sometimes, though, you can just destroy the main one and the rest, like little bubbles, he said, will just go away. It's always one big bubble or two, and then there's these little bubbles attached to it. People are trying to break the little bubbles all the time, but they just take an ice pick and go for the main, go for the throat. So he says, in such a birth, a soul retains knowledge of its previous births and strives harder to attain perfection. And so money is keeping us from doing that. Commerce. We're put into jobs. Learn that trade, attend that school, get that job, make that money, forget your divine memory of past lifetimes. Might as well put it like that, right? Those first four things, materialistic quest, but we have to add to it, yes, if you do all that, you're going to forget your past lifetimes. For 50, 60, 70, 80 years, you're going to think money, family, wife, spouse, children is the purpose of everything, to contribute to a society that wants you to go to war and calls itself monotheistic, but doesn't know anything about the truth of the matter. Never has, never will. Only a few out of 1,000 may come to know that and extract themselves in this way out of the world. And then come back fully consciously as a bodhisattva or a jivanmukta, if they so wish to. Then finally you end up with, or penultimately, transcends rites and rituals and seeks only after yoga. By former attainments, the soul is led on, wishing to know of yoga, transcends even religious rites and rituals and those who perform them. So you'll go beyond the whole professional thing. You'll get outside of the twice born, that's the Brahmin priest class, and you'll become a sannyasin. That's not a caste. You're not bound by the Vedas. You stand at the head of the Vedas when you're a sannyasin. They came out of you. You didn't come out of them. You told them what to say. They didn't tell you what to say. You're the living intelligence. And of course that's Vivekananda we're talking about. So finally, purifying the mind through many births reaches perfection. This is like Krama Mukti. And this is what, in the few remaining minutes which we don't have, this is what we need to be about. And what we'll be about also next week when we take this up. He says, thus striving with assiduity and purified over many births, the yogi reaches the goal supreme. What could be said beyond that? Lives as an adept yogi, exemplifying the supreme goal. The one established in yoga is deemed to be superior to ascetics, to men of knowledge, and even to those versed in the performance of rituals. Therefore, be thou a yogi, Arjuna, steeped in yoga. And the final quote here, so we can say we finished this chart, although we'll start out next week with this next to our Tibetan Buddhist to kind of remind us. Thus established in yoga, even at the hour of death, they get into oneness with Brahman. And they do that. That goes to this teaching about 6 illumined thoughts at the time of death. Which you can't see right now, I'm sorry. So be on hand next week here as dusk sets in, because you can no longer see the hairs on your arm. It's time to go meditate, Sri Ramakrishna said. So let's go meditate on all these beautiful teachings and make them our own, and think about paying them forward through the years of our sadhana and practice to a conscious passing from this body and into a much better and higher lifetime, or just not coming back at all if the choice is open to us. In whatever case, living a divine life here and now, because there's only one eternal moment, and the phases of time are also unreal. Your sort of discrimination can tell you that. Om. Om Purnamidha, Om Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate, Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. All that you perceive externally with the senses is finite. Everything which springs from, which is the source of the external, is within you internally and is infinite. It is from the infinite which this finite comes. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.